Me and for establishing my voice. So it has a history that FIG stands for figure, and FIG 1 was inspired by Marcel Boothaus, and it is conceived and developed by Mark Francis and Jay Jopling. So Mark Francis is one of the curators of Magicians de la Terre, which is known as the first post-colonial exhibition to date that took place in 1989 at Pompidou in Paris. And Mark has been independent when he came up with the idea of curating 50 exhibitions in 50 weeks, where each week would unfold an artistic practice. And Jay Jopling, who then, in 1999, hasn't started White Cube yet, came as a support. So on the left-hand side, if you could go to the next, so on the left-hand side, you see this incredible lineup of artists, and at the time, they were new names. For instance, Runa Islam had her first solo exhibition after graduating from Goldsmiths, but Fig 1 started and bookended with Richard Hamilton. You see also names such as Jeremy Deller or Carrie Young, which were, in a way, like a list of future greats. And you have to imagine a time in history where in the year 2000, there wasn't a Tate Modern, there wasn't Frieze Art Fair. And contemporary art was a new concept to London because England or UK has been quite conservative in following the pace that was unfolding in Europe at the time. So Fig 1 became a groundbreaking project and it provided a new model. There wasn't a concept of pop-up exhibitions as we know now. And Fig 2 is a revival. So 15 years later, one of the people, let's say a frequent audience member of Fig 1, Candida Gatler. She is a founding director or co-founding director of Outset, a philanthropic art organization in the UK. If we could go to yes, you're great, thanks. So 15 years later, Candida Gatler approached Mark Francis asking for a revival. So, and then Mark said, if you can find the budget, because it is a project that you have to have the budget initially, you can't fundraise as you go along, which I proved contrary, and also a space. So ICA, Institute of Contemporary Arts in London, came on board, and they found me. So the list of art names are the artists of Fig 2. If we could go to the next slide, thank you. So what I wanted to do was to develop Fig 2 to respond to the currency, the aesthetic and critical currency of our times. Fig 1 was a sequential exhibition of every week showcasing one artwork and mostly from studio of the artist directly into the exhibition room. And 15 years later, 2015, London was a different place. So I thought it could not be as static as Fig 1. Fig 1 achieved something else in its time, but what could Fig 2 do in the year 2015? And so I wanted to have an overarching theme that is wide enough so that I could actually put many practices under the umbrella, and also at the same time a share and urgency. So there were certain methodologies I employed. Some of them were not to work with artists that I always worked with. So 70% of the program is artists I never worked with. 30% of them is artists I didn't know of their practices before. So for me, it was also a learning curve. The other one was actually a bigger obstacle. I wanted to connect each week to another, to its successor. So that I mostly give this example of, like asking you to imagine a giant house of 50 rooms, each room opening to the other room that is different in size, in color, in smell, in experience. However, there is a thread, and sometimes that thread can be more visible and more outstanding, and sometimes it's more subliminal. And it's not only creating a house that is linear, that is just a very long train, but I don't know if you have this game Snakes and Ladders, that actually connecting weeks to, like, week 5 is connected to week 12, connected to week 42. Of course, I wanted everyone, all of my friends, to come to all 50 weeks, see all the different shows that I was putting forward, but I knew it would not be the case. So at least each week, or a grouping of weeks at week 2, could give the experience of what I was trying to achieve. So one other thing that was very important, if we could go to the next slide, thank you, is that I was given a carte blanche. And I think that is something very, very important and very, if I could say, privilege, or as like a prestige, you know, like beyond prestige. It is a luxury to have a space, budget to do whatever you want to do. And I wanted to pass on that carte blanche to the artists. So 45 of the 50 exhibitions are new commissions. And that was very important, that we also fostered new thinking and new production, and while supporting the continuity of production of the artists. The other thing that was very important is responding to the site. So I was in the RCA studio. It is a 100 square meter room. At times I could expand to RCA Theatre, and we also had this Bicester Village, which is a retail shopping centre in Oxfordshire. That was one of the supporters, so they also asked me to commission 4 of the Fig 2 artists in Bicester Village. But other than that, we were in one room. So if we could go into the GIF, if it's playing. So it was very important for me to invent and reinvent the space. And I came up with, and in collaboration with the architects, Universal Design Studio, these mobile display units. So we had mobile walls that moved every week according to the demands of the exhibition. And and there would be weeks that audiences would come and they would be confused, and they would say, I was here last week, it's not the same room. And that was for me an important achievement. And the other thing that was very important was, how can we actually become an institution as Fig 2 that in a way accommodates the needs of the work, in a way like not the menu defining the food that supply that is needed, the food supplies defines the menu. So in that regard, it was very, very much of artist-driven. And if we can go to the next slide. So, of course, I only had one room, but ambitions were bigger. I think you saw in the slide before, it wasn't only 50 exhibitions, we had collateral events, artists' presentations, film screenings, performances, and beyond that, some of the projects were really ambitious in their scale. So this is one example, and it was a commission by Eva Grubinger, and she wanted to respond to the ethos of London, and her exhibition was called Black Diamond Bay. He was very inspired by Joseph Conrad's writings, as well as the club scene of the 80s and 90s in London. So we shipped a gigantic Fender, and we called her Bertha because we actually felt like giving birth. And we also expanded to the RCA Theatre, where you would see almost like a detournement, a hiatus from the everyday's hum and drum of London, that you would go in, and sometimes you would find, audience members literally staying there for hours and having a detournement, and we would actually tell them, sorry, we have to close the doors. And we collaborated with L40 Kunstverein in Berlin, because this was a really big scale production. We needed commissioning partners. So the sculpture in London became a public sculpture on Rosa Luxemburg Platz in Berlin. And then of course the exhibition changed and adapted to the space in Berlin. And we even managed to make a small publication with Sternberg. If you could go to the next slide, please. And you can see a publication. It is quite a hefty scale, but not that heavy. And it was very important that this project was documented. But beyond, it is not a publication that only is a record of what happened, because the website already has it. The website has a huge archive, but the publication is something different. It has its own relationship. And for that, I also worked with writers or commissioning them for specific essays that respond to the use of language in contemporary art today by Gilda Williams, or the significance of performance and performativity in today's art and its visibility. A conversation with Catherine Wood, the curator of performance at Tate Modern. Or I had a conversation with Hans-Uri Obrist looking at the institutions of 21st century. Because for me, FIC2 was a formation of a non-institutional institution. I had all the ingredients to be an institution, but also all the possibilities of not being one. I could invite artists 10 days before their opening. I could program while we were running the shows. And one thing that is very important is that for me, FIC2 wasn't only a visual production platform, but also a discursive platform. So Art Fund, which is also a philanthropic fund in the UK, supported my position as the curator. And with our, due to our agreement, I came up with the idea of releasing 8-part curatorial seminars looking into concepts of social imaginary, responsibility, politics of display. And on these 8-part seminars were very important to also unfold the curatorial thinking behind FIC2 with audiences, and it was mostly students who attended. And the other thing that we did was curatorial workshops where Art Fund gave bursary to curators and directors of institutions in the UK to come to London to experience a show, and I would deliver a workshop with them. And from these conversations came out FIC Futures. And this is a new collecting scheme, and I'm very, very proud of this scheme where, with the support of Arts Council England, Art Fund and Outset, and it's a further support, we have managed to get on board 6 partnering institutions to work with us on a legacy scheme where, if we could go to the next slide please, where 16 projects from FIC2 took place in 4 different institutions between 2018 and March 2019, and afterwards in conversation with curators of the partnering collections, 29 works of art, if we could go to the next slide, acquisitions, 29 artworks joined 4 UK collections. And for me, this is also something I would like to perhaps discuss and explore together. And that is also another thing I feel, this kind of contribution to the kind of collective pool, collective consciousness of a country. And while doing so, you're building it through conversations. It is not a gifting scheme. You're not saying, this is an artwork, this is going to be free for you, take it. It's about excitements, it's about also proliferating dialogues between artists and different practitioners in the country, and different curators, as well as curators of institutions, as well as curators of collections. So maybe, do you have any questions? So that I'm not, or shall I continue? Okay. So after a whole year of not stopping, and it was a big marathon, I was given the chance to step outside. So Art Night is a new art festival in London that started in 2016. And it is a one-night-only festival, modeled on Nuit Blanche in Paris. Maybe you might know there are different proliferations in Toronto, in Vancouver, and Sydney. But Art Night focuses on contemporary art specifically. So So I had the pleasure of curating the second edition in 2017 in collaboration with the Whitechapel Gallery in East London. So after literally moving walls and shaking up things in a room, I had this incredible space, if you could go to the next slide please, where I circled 1 kilometer radius around Whitechapel Gallery, and we had 13 main locations, from Tower Bridge to Shoreditch Overground Station. And these 13 locations by 11 artists, which 9 of them were new commissions, were joined by 60 collateral events on the night. So Art Night, as it says on the tin, is a festival that unfolds in the night. So it starts at 6 p.m. and ends at 4 a.m. in the morning the next day. And I'll share some of the projects with you that I think might be interesting to also talk about the public realm and site-specific commissioning. So again, for Art Night, one thing that was important for me is I always work with concepts. I have a very concept-driven practice, but I'm not interested in concepts illustrating artworks or working with artists asking them to translate the concepts into artworks, but I'm interested in them as becoming cluster points or points of triggering further thinking. So East London is a hybrid location. It's been a nomadic place for the last 5 centuries, if not longer. And it's always been the place where minorities resided. You know, it could be from Huguenot families, the French Huguenot families, to German Sikh weavers, or the Bangladeshi families. It's always been the marginalia. And it has a continuous flux, so its constant is change. And currently it's again changing. It's never going to stop. So I was very much interested in exploring what could I say that could resonate with the location. At the time I was reading Hans-Georg Gadamer, who's a very inspiring philosopher for me, and also he's a philosopher of hermeneutics. He's written this book called Truth and Method. It's also regarded as one of the 3 most important philosophy books of 20th century. And in the book he coins the term fusion of horizons. He says that everyone has a horizon line. And we have a visual, a physical horizon line and an epistemological one. So the visual one allows us to see. As you know, without perspective, without a horizon line, we wouldn't be able to see. So epistemologically, the horizon line stands for the limit of our aspirations, desires, dreams, and knowledge. So without having an epistemological horizon line, we wouldn't be able to understand. There wouldn't be philosophy, there wouldn't be knowledge. And through that, he actually talks about differences and says that because we have differences in us, it's intrinsic, that's how knowledge is possible. If we were all the same, if we thought the same, felt the same, and behaved the same way, there would be nothing to understand, there would be nothing to do. So I was very much inspired by that, and of course it was also a very important moment of the referendum with Brexit. Let's see what's going to happen, and it was for me very important to have a moment to say, let's celebrate the differences. And this work by Melanie Manchot is actually a very good kind of outpouring of that. So Melanie works with video, performance, photography, and for this commission called Dance All Night London, we worked with 10 different dance schools inherent in East London. And we were very much interested in looking at what is being practiced, because dance is universal. Everybody moves, everybody has a body language, and everybody has a kind of a behavior, a habit of movement. And we brought together 10 different amateur practitioners practicing dance schools, from Afro-Cuban to reggaeton, from salsa to swing, from contemporary dance to elderly group. It was called Green Candle Dance Company. The average age is 85. Our eldest dancer was 92. He can't walk, but he can dance. And they did a special choreography for us. So if we could go to the video, perhaps. So for us it was really important to engage these dance schools, but also engage where they are located in the overall map. So on the night of the festival, these different dance schools would leave their schools and would be, I think the video takes a bit of a time, would be joined by other dancers on the street to arrive at the Exchange Square, which is a privately owned public square. And that is a very important concept in the UK, where we have private ownership on public access points. And the Exchange Square overlooks the Liverpool station. So this is a short clipping, if it plays, that you see the feeling of how the evening was unfolding, where we had tango dances, we had swing, and I mean, it has a bit of a sound, but I think it's also... So what you would also hear is that they all have their headphones, and they're listening to the music through their headphones, and if you're a passerby on the street, you would just hear their steps on the street. And if we could go to the next video, please. And so what happened is that... maybe the next one? Thank you, Ada. What happened is that they would come to the Exchange Square, where we transformed the square into a dance floor for the night, and at a given time, 3 different dance schools would give classes. So you would take these wireless headphones and you would pick a channel. It could be Afro-Cuban, it could be capoeira, and you would be instructed to dance. And then of course you would see these different kind of negotiation of movements and people on the square. And then at some point we ran out of headphones, but it didn't stop people. So people were still dancing around, you know, following other people's movements. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then the other, it was an epic evening, I can tell you that. And then behind you see the Liverpool Street Station. So we also had steps, people to watch. So you would see trains arriving and leaving, and Let's move on to the next one. So the next one was a commission by Dohosu. It took us a bit longer because the scale and the ambition of the commission was bigger than what we could make happen within 9 months. So this work, called Bridging Home London, is located next to the Liverpool Street Station. And it is a co-commission with Sculpture in the City and City of London Corporation. And as you see, it has a big lineup of supporters. And it is a traditional Korean house, the one-to-one replica of Do-Ho-Soo's childhood home. And he was very much interested in lending his childhood home on a pedestrian bridge with its bamboo garden. If you could go to the next slide. And so to date, we unveiled it in 2018 September. So it was going to be taken down in 2019 September, but it has become such a celebrated artwork that they first extended for it to stay on site until 2020, and now it's extended until 2022. So if you happen to go to London anytime soon, within the next 3 years, the house will still be there. And the other project that was a commission again for the Art Night London is, just to give you a breath of the variety of practices, is by Lawrence Leck. And this is his first VR work called PlayStation. So in the art night, we work with historic sites, extraordinary locations such as a Masonic temple in a 5-star hotel, as well as buildings that were developed for future communities. So Whitechapel building is developed by Derwent, which is a new developer in the UK, and especially working with London. They're trying to also create a Silicon Valley in Old Street Station. And this building is now made for tech companies, startup companies, and the government's digital archive is also located here. So Lawrence created a site-responsive work for this building. It's called PlayStation, and he wanted to speculate about the future of East London. So in his work, he's imagining East London in 2037, where AI and robots have taken over, and there's nothing to do for the humans but play. Perhaps we could play a minute of the video so that you have kind of a feeling of what it is. But I don't know if we have sound, because sound would be crucial in this one. Sorry, I should have communicated that earlier. If not, I can share this video with you. But just to give you an idea of how he mapped this work into the building, so that he imagined this company, a corporation called Farsight, that employs humans to play. And on the night we had these VR sets, and people were asked to play, and there was also a very important, it's okay. Oh, there's a subtitle, that's fine. So you see London became a playground as well. Like this is all the hospital, it's all a fun park.
The founding of Farsight on the 1st of August 2018 enabled China's participation in the Open AI project. In the 20 years since, Farsight has opened offices around the world and is committed to the advancement of AI for humanity. Farsight's mission is to ensure that the creation of smarter than human intelligence has a positive impact.
That's naive.
Advanced intelligence is to behave as we intend, even in the absence of human supervision. Farsight conducts fundamental, long-term research toward the creation of safe artificial general intelligence. Today we collaborate on major research projects with leading scientists around the globe.
Thank you. Indeed, but it is a sinister work. So you only actually engage with it when you are playing. You can go to the next slide, please. When you're playing. And he was also referring to the conservative propaganda that was done in the 80s. And the title was "Labor is Not Working." And so he was very much interested in speculating about the future of work where there is not work. And in the games, they are very, very mundane exercises. A bit like, like moving boxes that they do, for instance, in Amazon warehouses now, all these machines, and zero-hour contracted people in the UK.
But you do realize you're celebrating doom.
Am I celebrating what?
But I'm not saying you.
The work.
The subjects.
Celebrating
Doom. D-O-O-M.
in the sense that doomness of
Doom
people.
How do you translate doom?
Annihilation.
The abyss.
Yeah.
Yes, the abyss.
The end of humanity.
The end of the human condition. I'm not saying that it's avoidable. I'm saying we should have a more allegorical and critical perspective on it.
You have to experience.
I don't mean to interrupt.
But you have to experience the whole work, because it does have. Thank you. It has a very critical and very political foundation, but you have to experience the whole work. What I'm giving you is a taster here. Yeah.
I apologize.
No problem, absolutely. So if you could please go to the next slide. And for me, again, the legacy of these commissions were very important because Art Night is a one-night-only festival. If you're there, you experience it. If you're not there, it's gone. And so it was really exciting to have 5 of the works now having a life that is longer than one night. So Melanie's project joined Arts Council collection as a set of instructions, a 3-channel video installation, and as a performance piece. I didn't talk about Anne Hardy's work, which was a large-scale sound and sculpture installation that joined Leeds Art Gallery. And Lawrence Leck's work actually joined British Council collection as the first VR work in the collection. And the other 2 works, one, as you've seen, Doho's Bridging Home, and the other one is a wall mural, which is going to be permanent, and that was made in collaboration with the local residents of a council housing estate that is looked after by City of London Corporation. So these were the 2 big projects, and going beyond, I'll talk a little bit about the Liverpool Biennial, and then perhaps we could open the floor for questions. So I became the director of the Biennial 7 months ago, and it's been quite of a roller coaster in the sense that we have a new edition coming up in 2020 July, which you are all very welcome to join us. And it is quite an exciting and a large project. As you may know, it's the largest and oldest biennial in the UK, and it happens every 2 years, founded in 1998. So the next year will be the 11th edition, and each edition changes its trail, its theme, and the plethora of artistic voices. Just briefly, I think we are de-installing now. Okay. The talk is over. Okay. They will take the table away. So next year we have announced our title and the theme. It's called The Stomach and the Port. And the stomach will be our main primary organ, where we think, we feel, we engage with the world, where the world transforms us, and where we transform the world. And we are making an analogy between the stomach and the port, Liverpool being the first dry dock and the port of trade, slavery, colonialism. And we are making an analogy that the Liverpool port was the mouth and the stomach of Liverpool and England and Europe. All the goods that traveled from South America, so South Africa via the Caribbean, entered Europe through Liverpool. And in that analogy, we are looking at an almost more of a holistic perspective of transformation, circulation, digestion. So in a sense that food, sound and movement will be pivotal in the next year's edition. In a sense in which we want to kind of look at different sounds that traveled and that has been in continuous transformation and currently as well. I don't know if you know Liverpool, but the accent is very, very different, and the way people are also very different, and I think it's thanks to 9 million people that have passed through the Liverpool's streets and its ports. So if we could just go to the last slide. So this is the list of artists that we have announced last month. We have David Singh Yi from Peru, and we have 51 artists, almost 64% new commissions, which is very important for us. And there are also some other things that are very important for us in the new era, if I could say that, because I think each director introduces their own set of sensitivities, set of, like dialogues and concerns and conversations into the biennial's body. that we are going to go more public. And we will not only commission artworks in the public realm for temporary and permanent durations, but also we will be expanding our trail. We will go to a new district. It's called Fabric District, that we've never been since 20 years. I was actually even ambitious that I wanted to cross the Mersey, but probably it's going to happen in 2022. And it's very important for us that we also keep having conversations with the groups that we already have been building, communities, networks, but also engage and expand beyond what we have already achieved. And for me, it's very important to underline the fact that biennials operate on 3 different levels: locally, nationally, and internationally. And of course, it's very important to bring international discourse into a specificity of a locality, of a city, of a town, but also at the same time, it's very important to anchor what you're doing in the place of its execution. Thank you so much. So I look forward to your questions. Okay.
Buenas noches. Ahora vamos a abrir a preguntas. Yo creo que ya hubo un preview de las preguntas de parte de Gustavo. Pero antes me gustaría hacer 2 o 3, si me lo permiten, 2 o 3 preguntas, también un poco abiertas, en relación a la presentación tan interesante que ha hecho Fatoş en relación a su práctica curatorial y, digamos, a formas, digamos, alternativas, no triviales, de prácticas curatoriales. Hay un primer tema que me parece interesante y creo que va a ser relevante también para el Perú, donde creo que todavía estamos en una etapa en donde uno de nuestros grandes retos son las audiencias. Vi que en FIC2, que es algo que se develaba cada semana, digamos, hay un gran reto que es el mantener, obviamente, a audiencias que quieran ir permanentemente, pero también, claro, en el ICA, en Londres, hay gente que va permanentemente, es público cautivo. Pero, ¿cómo era la relación con la audiencia? ¿Cómo usaban, por ejemplo, los medios digitales? Yo he notado en lo que has presentado mucho énfasis en el trabajo con los medios sociales, los medios digitales. Nos parecería interesante que nos comentes un poco cuál fue ese trabajo que hacían con las audiencias, que seguramente también era un trabajo que iba evolucionando conforme se daban los proyectos. Esa es una pregunta.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. So, FIC2, when it was announced to be revived, did receive a lot of interest from the press because of also, like, you know, Mark Francis is the director of Gagosian, Jay Jopling, as you know, White Cube, and everybody was interested in who would be my first artist. And you know, Richard Hamilton was the first artist of FIG1, and that book ended. And everybody was like, who is going to be? And people were also interested in what's going to be at FIG2's program. Is it going to be the top 10 best-selling artists of the world, or, you know, UK? And I'm a bit rebellious. So my first artist is Laura Eldred. Nobody knew who she is. She has been working in the field for 15 years, never had a solo exhibition. I wanted to start with a female artist. It was very important to make that, as a statement, without necessarily announcing as well. It wasn't announced as the first artist is going to be female or anything like that. I'm not interested in, creating dichotomies. But I think it's very important to know what you decide and what are your decisions, what are your positions, and keep doing it. So without justification, without compromises, as much as possible. We also, so it was very important that the program was very strong. But we had a very big social media platform, and the flexibility of FIG2 was we would only announce the next week's exhibition on the Wednesday before. So you have to imagine, we only had 11 hours turnover. Each exhibition opened on Monday 6 p.m., closed on Sunday 6 p.m., and then ICA closes at 11 p.m. on Sundays. So we had to sometimes bribe the people, the guards, the security guards, to give us 1 more hour or arrive early. But we could only announce on Wednesdays. So everybody knew our newsletters. That was really important. The other thing that was really important is I'm very much interested in a holistic experience. So when I first arrived to UK, everybody had loyalty cards. You go to a coffee shop and then you get these cards that you collect a stamp that, if you get 9 coffee, the 10th is free. Or, 6th sandwich is free, or 5th soup is free. And I was very, kind of flabbergasted about it, and I never collected. So I did waste a lot of, free food in my first 3 years in the UK. And then now I have so many loyalty cards. But I thought we should have a loyalty card at FIG2. So I asked each artist of the week to design a stamp, and we produced, also I can be very ambitious, so we produced 10,000 loyalty cards, because I thought, it's going to be swamped by people. And we had like 21,000 people coming through our doors over a year, but we didn't spend 10,000 loyalty cards, because I thought this would be like the big thing and everybody will collect the stamps. And if you have a full house on your loyalty card, you would get a free publication. 20 people did that, which was amazing. The other draw was, of course you need drinks at the openings, right? Beck's was the sponsor of FIG1. I didn't want a beer sponsor. So, and it's very interesting, I don't know if I can claim any kind of visionary geniusness, but I was like, it has to be gin. I was very inspired by Hendrick's gin, it was the best gin of, 2003 in the world. We approached Hendrick's and we said, hey, can you do 50 different gin cocktails in 50 weeks? They said no. We were okay, fine. And then we found this young company, which is not young anymore, Sipsmith Independent Spirits. I don't know if you have it here, but now it's like a very big gin company in the UK. Over the last 4 years, they have skyrocketed. Very delicious gin. So we told them, can you make 50 different gin cocktails? They said, fine. And we said 200 cocktails a week. And plus the opening party and the closing party, that makes 10,500 cocktails. They were like, okay, we'll do it. And every week, the artist of the week would give them a description. For instance, Charles Avery said, I want the exhibition to feel like the taste of salty water on a full moon's night in the summer. And then so they made a gin that was infused by rosemary. We had Susan Treaster, one of our artists, that a mutual friend. She worked in a conspiracy cocktail. So the cocktail was green, but actually left blue in your blue trace in your tongue. Anyway, the cocktails were also like really fashionable. So at the opening, we always had like a queue, because it was very important for me to open at 6 p.m. sharp. And sometimes it's always a bit of a hassle. You still need to fiddle, but it was very important. But we started having queues, and there was one queue definitely coming for the gin, and the other queue coming for the art. And yeah, that's how it happened. But,
everywhere.
Yeah.
That's world
It's a good draw.
language. Yes.
Yeah. But I think our best social media achievement was at Art Night, because we had an incredible team who had a very strong language, aesthetic language and design skills. So we made videos of our artists, like 1-minute videos of our artists talking about their commissions that were released through social media. We made videos of me, of director of Whitechapel Gallery, of main funders. We had like, these kind of intrigues of like visiting locations, etc. And on the night, the first art night had 35,000 visitors. So I was speculating we will have 50,000 because it's East London, it's more prone to going out. We had 75,000 people. It was overwhelming. Like, we were not prepared, like we had a good team and everyone, but I think it was due to social media that it spread so far, so much, that there were queues everywhere and the streets were crowded. It was great, but quite, huge.
Fantástico. Tengo dos preguntitas más antes de abrir al público. Una tiene que ver con trabajos de espacio público. Por ejemplo, tú nos has mostrado el trabajo de Toho Su en un puente que además ha quedado por un periodo más largo. Y ahí me vienen dos preguntas que creo que están asociadas, además que tienen que ver con lo que acabas de decir. Hay un número de impacto, tú hablaste ahí de 800.000 o más visitantes que vieron el trabajo, seguramente vas, porque digamos que mucha gente va a pasar y verlo. Entonces yo tengo ahí dos dudas o consultas. Una es, ¿cómo articulas que la ciudad o que en este caso la zona en donde este trabajo se ha presentado acepte que el trabajo se quede ahí por un tiempo? ¿Cómo articulas ese vínculo con la municipalidad o con el gobierno local? Y además, en Inglaterra hay un término que se usa bastante para describir cualquier proyecto que uno hace, que es el value for money. ¿Cómo mides el impacto? ¿Hasta qué punto es importante medir el impacto? Acabas de dar los números en Art Night, pero ¿hasta qué punto mides el impacto y cuán relevante es ese impacto justamente para una organización pública o local que va a mantener esa obra por un tiempo determinado?
Great. Thank you. One thing I didn't say about the commission of Toho, it was very important to insert a very foreign body, an architectural body, into the center of City of London. On one side, in the pictures you see, it's the high-rises, the skyscrapers, the glass and steel facades. The other side of the bridge is the London Wall. And it is a very, very convoluted historical side that can't be touched. And the other side is the new phase of London. So it was very important to insert a Korean, architectural trait in the middle of the city. And to create that kind of, how can I say, estrangement of what, how, and as you see on the bridge, it's also at an angle, so it does look like it has landed, it's not built on it. So it was very important as well to kind of like pronounce the fact that London also is a hybrid culture, and it should stay that way. Regarding audiences and regarding impact, I think I'm a romantic. I'm of course, I work with big scale productions and numbers or quantity is important, but for me it's the quality. It's like, when you read a book and sometimes you're still in the feeling, in the atmosphere of the book the next day because something has captivated you and you can't let go. Or sometimes it's like 5 years later, you're at a bus stop and some experience happens and it kind of makes you recall that book. And for me, art experience is like that. And for me, the impact is the immeasurable, the inexplicable one, where if on the night, beyond, this kind of like, and like dancing is of course fun, etc. But beyond the fun of participating in an artwork, if something resonates, if something stays with people, I think that's the impact. And then of course we have other measurements that we need to comply for funding, like one thing was, what's the economic impact of making that festival in East London? If you calculate everybody spending, £10 a night, 75,000 people is a lot of money. But that is perhaps something that comes after, when you are looking back and evaluating. But for me, the most important thing is making ideas happen. And I love working closely with artists, not with everyone in the same manner. Of course, you have to have different levels of connections and different levels of collaboration. But if I could make their ideas happen, then that is the biggest impact. And it can ripple out, because this energy, this passion, this desire, I think, does resonate.
Tengo una pequeña pregunta antes de una última pregunta. ¿Cuál es, porque tu respuesta me ha traído otra pregunta, pero así como es siempre para un curador producir nuevos trabajos, comisionar nuevos trabajos, es un proyecto que no es meramente el trabajo de un artista, es también el trabajo que uno, el esfuerzo, la energía que uno pone. El hecho, por ejemplo, en FIC2 de presentar trabajos semana a semana, cómo también veías que los artistas reflexionaban en relación a su obra a obras nuevas, que son casi como experimentos, y cómo se volvía este espacio también un laboratorio para que ellos entiendan cómo el público entendía su obra, porque el problema muchas veces también en el campo del arte es que no necesariamente todos los artistas producen obra pensando en el público, y creo que en este caso hay una posibilidad muy grande de que la obra se vuelva un laboratorio conceptual de prueba y error, que es muy importante para que las obras también sean exitosas de alguna manera, o que tengan una conexión emocional con el público, esa conexión que tú acabas de mencionar.
Okay, thank you. No, it's very important. And for instance, the first exhibition was a work in progress, and it was very important to explore different ways of exhibition making. So sometimes, the work of the artist would unfold throughout the week, because it was based on a performance that was made with the audiences that booked their slots. Or it would be, like 32 hours of conversations with big, big data analysts, cybernetic experts, environmental activists, and writers that the artists brought together. And sometimes it would be also that we would give the studio to the artist, where it would become their production ground, where the work would be finalized on the last day. So instead of an opening, they would do a closing opening. And it was very important that literally we accommodated the need of the artist. If you could perhaps go back in some images, you see our office was in it. So we lived with the artwork, and that is so emotional, because every Sunday you feel really sad of letting something go because you've been living with it. And then every Monday at 6 p.m. you're so happy because something else happened. And you're so excited all of a sudden again. And but it was very important to, how can I say, the content to precede its form, and rather than vice versa. That's why I called it 50 projects in 50 weeks instead of 50 exhibitions, because sometimes exhibition is more defined, more of a display, a presentation. It's a project that's more dynamic, more active. And really the artists ruled it. And of course, I mean, as you have observed, I have opinions too. And so it was a conversation, but it was always at different levels, but yeah.
Y la última pregunta antes de abrir, que es una curiosidad más que una pregunta, una última pregunta que es más una curiosidad quizás, y una pregunta con un nivel de curiosidad e incidencia. Tú acabas de entrar a la Bienal de Liverpool como directora, ya con un equipo, ya con una curadora artística. Tú eres una curadora y tienes muchas ideas, explotas de ideas. ¿Cómo se puede ser director de una bienal sin intervenir tanto en un proceso curatorial ya empezado por otra curadora, ¿no? ¿Hasta qué punto han habido retos en ese proceso? Porque me imagino que han habido algunos retos de decir, bueno, puedo hasta acá, pero hasta acá no. Y es una duda, es una curiosidad. Además creo que todas son mujeres con mucha fuerza y carácter en ese grupo.
Thank you. No, it is true. So Manuela Moscoso, curator from Ecuador who was living and working in Mexico, was already appointed before I was appointed. But I have two hats. So I'm an artistic director and chief executive of the biennial. So I run the organization as well as I hold the responsibility of its artistic direction. And I have all the respect to Manuela and her curatorial vision and insights. And I can say that it is, curated by her, but it is a conversation. And yeah, I mean, I can't stop having ideas. So then, when they're out in the world, sometimes they make, they get captured by other people too. So it is a conversation, but of course, it's an interesting or a different space that I am now. That the curatorial planning and the programming has already started before I joined, but I'm definitely contributing to it.
Preguntas.
Now yours.
Muchísimas gracias. Preguntas del público. Hay un micrófono que va a ir volando hacia. Hay una pregunta, ya creo, hay alguien que levantó la mano.
Fatosh, thank you so much for your time and your lovely conversation. It's been really insightful. I want to ask something.
Mejor en español.
Maybe you might need to speak Spanish.
Claro.
Yeah.
Sí, mejor,
okay?
porque te van a traducir. Le van a traducir a Fatosh. Sí.
Okay, so I'll just speak English because they'll translate it anyway. So, sorry. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because you were talking about creating communities for the exhibition part and your work as a curator that was directed to this kind of what kind of audiences could you bring to different places. And I suppose it's such a rewarding work being in London because it's such a cosmopolitan city with a lot of different cultures, and you're basically also having very strong financial support from different entities. So I think my question goes in the direction that what happens when you are trying to develop curatorial work in a place like here in Lima. I know it's your first night here, but Lima is a huge city and it's very different cities at once. It's not only there's this district and kind of people that live in this district and whatever from here is completely different kind of people, completely different social strata and everything. So I wanted to know your thoughts about how curation works from these kind of spaces of resistance of marginalized people here in Lima. What kind of challenges do you think a curator that has maybe not the support that a major curator could have in other countries, but it's working here with the means that they all have like little money and really participating with really marginalized people, because here characteristic of the art is that it's funded by different institutions and there's really a small minority of people just going to the galleries and to different exhibition spaces of distribution. I think maybe most of them are here seated right now, I don't know. But from the perspective of an outsider, what do you think would be the challenges facing someone that could want to put this art of marginalized people in exhibition in a city like this?
Thank you. I come from Istanbul. And so I didn't always, like work with large-scale projects and big budgets. But I think, also FIC too, if you think about it, like overall it was a big budget, but per exhibition it was not really. But I think one thing that is very important is to keep doing it. And I think it's not about limitations of conditions. I think it's more about exploring and like experimenting, but plus persevering. I think perseverance is very important. And many big artists are big today, or curators as well, or writers or thinkers, because they persevere, because they keep insisting on what they do, what they think, what they feel. And one thing, like a big challenge, is fashion. I think, Benjamin says all societies operate through fashions and movements, but I do feel, especially today, with the pressure and the wealth of social media, you might think you want to get from A to B faster with applying a formula. I don't think that works. There are no templates. I think the only thing is keeping integrity and critical stance to what you do, and being open to conversations and being open to other people's worldviews and ideas. And if you can hear and listen to people as well as hear and listen to yourself, I think you can operate in any scale and in any means. Yeah, pleasure.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Hola, quería saber como curadora, cómo es que es su proceso de selección, porque por ejemplo mencionabas un momento que había una muestra en donde se esperaba que probablemente fueran los 10 más conocidos, los 10 más vendidos. Sin embargo, porque hizo una selección de artistas, o en todo caso empezaste con un artista que no era conocido. ¿Cómo es su proceso de selección como curadora?
For me, it's the artwork and the practice. I'm very much interested in the strength of the work, but I also do my homework and study the works, the portfolio of the artist. And I think my strength comes from the fact that I can engage with the thinking processes, and that's how I can work with commissions, because there are big risks that you take, but because you have an understanding and a sense of the practice of the artist, you can definitely take those risks. So regarding the selection, I am very interested in I'm curious. So I'm interested in, continuous looking. It's like, for instance, I was telling today, I started working at a photography art magazine. And with photography, you have to train your eye. And to train your eye, you have to look at as many photographs as possible. You might like the artist, the work, the photography or not, but it is about training the eye. And I really feel with my current roles, I'm continuously on the look. And when I was doing FIC 2, it was the same. So I would read, I would talk to friends, ask for their recommendations. I would talk to the artists I work with and ask for their recommendations. And there are artists in FIC 2 that I met only through other artists. And the other thing is about looking outside of the box. What is not there. For instance, for me, FIC 2 is a possibility, or how can I say? It's a solo exhibition, and sometimes, as you've seen, some of the artists were grouped together, or there were trios, but it is a solo exhibition. So it was very important for me not to repeat what London was offering. So if there was another artist I was looking at, but that artist would have a solo exhibition in another institution, I wouldn't choose that artist. Because there's still other voices that need to be heard. And I'm very interested in also artists that have a long-standing practice but haven't been as visible. I'm not talking about underrepresentation or, I'm just saying practitioners that have a very strong body of work, but as Laura Eldred or as Susan Treister, now she's becoming more and more well-known, or I don't know, or artists that are very well-known, to kind of put them in the same platform, so that something else happens. Thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Hola. Sorry.
Respecto de lo que estaba viendo sobre los proyectos que realizaste con los distintos artistas, uno que me llamó la atención y justo al respecto fue el de PlayStation, y que me puso a pensar, los proyectos que muestran, que si bien son espacio cerrado y espacio público, tienen bastante que ver también con los nuevos medios y los medios digitales. Sin embargo, me pregunto si tienes experiencia o cuál es tu opinión al respecto sobre los espacios virtuales para la exposición, porque también existen lo que son galerías virtuales, como el galería que sigues.
No, it's a great question. So, how can I say? It's also a new media for me, and actually, there's an interview with me in, I think, late 2016, that I'm despising digital art because I'm saying, oh, it's translation and it's not interesting. So it was great to kind of actually work with an artist that works with new media, virtual reality, and explore what can be done. And it's still a new terrain. I don't think we are in post-internet. We still don't know what internet is doing to us and our perception. So, and it is a new terrain, a new, terrain firma to be explored. I think the most important thing is to be open and to kind of engage with all these different modes of production, but also at the same time, as you take critical stance against the painting, do that with works of, new media. I think translation is for me the handicap, in the sense that sometimes because it is a new medium, a new arena, something might look new, but actually it might be a one-to-one replica of another concept that we wouldn't find interesting if it was a sculpture. So I'm interested in kind of going back as well, so it's not only going forward. Yes, thank you.
¿Cómo hace para no caer en la espectacularización del arte? Hay una tendencia bien fuerte a ello y creo que es parte de la crítica que Gustavo Kutik hacía respecto al videojuego, que es muy entretenido, pero hay siempre el riesgo que la gente se lo tome a una lectura de primer y no de segundo grado. Entonces, ¿cómo hace para que un baile en la calle, una casa coreana salida de contexto, aterrizada sobre un puente, logre no ser más que un juego, un gag, algo que dice, son los fadas, los locos del arte contemporáneo que nos han traído una cosita? ¿Cómo hace para intentar al menos que el público se lo tome en serio y que el discurso decolonial que entiendo tiene usted pueda pasar al público?
Thank you. It's a great question. So, for instance, I was highlighting the fact that the dance performance event, Art Encounter, took place in a privately owned public square. And actually, on the night, it was claimed to be public, true publics, true bodies that were inhabiting the space, claiming as theirs and actually making it theirs. So for me that was very important, and because otherwise on a day-to-day basis that square and that area is never visited by publics. It is so-called public space, but it's actually a complex of offices, and it's only people who work in the offices use that square. So for us, it was about opening that part to of East London to audiences. And the other thing is the experience, and I think that is very important. You can and the experience that unfolds its intent, in the sense that you can do a similar thing. You can do a silent disco on top of the Shard. How does it make a difference than what we did on Art Night London? Is how it was configured. It was very important that all these different groups were represented without being represented. They were asking other people to join. You didn't have to be Afro-Cuban to dance Afro-Cuban, and I think that was the underlining subliminal condition that was part of also the PlayStation. You would have fun. You would fail, you would succeed, you go to the next stage, but the day later, if you think about what actually have you done and what is all this about, and if you can really see actually that whole far side, the speculation of play as a kind of a modus operandi of human condition is very sinister, something else starts to unfold. So for me, it could look spectacular, but when you actually, as an individual, can start thinking about it, reflecting on it, if it can unfold, if it can open up to other directions, to other concerns or forms of thinking, then it surpasses its practical nature. Yeah.
¿Habrá alguna pregunta más para cerrar? ¿No? Bueno. Yo solamente,
One more.
Sí, ahí hay una más, ya.
No se me queda por dentro. Thank you so much for your talk. I'll ask in English. So it seems is it times are really important to factor in your practice? So you have these 50 weeks and then you have one night only. I suppose the difference between Big 1 and Big 2 is that then we are fully immersed in the digital temporalities 24/7 and everything. Jonathan Perry talks about late capitalism and not being able to sleep. So what about the temporality of doing something so fast or so fleeting is for you as a curator important and recoverable critic?
Yeah, thank you. No, it definitely. I think so. When I first started my practice, and also Fala referred to the magazine I founded with an artist friend of mine, I was obsessed about time, and the magazine was called Now is Were. So whenever you recall a now that has just passed, it becomes plural in its nature. And then I did a trilogy of exhibitions, etc. And I was also joking when I got the FIC2 appointment and the art night, you know, like 1 week exhibitions and then 1 night only festival and then what else, you know, and then a biennial, which is, again, it's time related because you have 2-year cycles in order to kind of realize one big edition. So a couple of things. One is when you go and see an exhibition, indifferent to its duration, either it's a week long, it's a month long, it's a year long, the amount of time you spend in the exhibition is limited to maximum 40 minutes. So in that sense, making an exhibition for 1 week does not make a big difference because you only, as an audience member, spend a limited amount of time. With Art Night, what I explored and didn't show all the work is different temporalities. So, for instance, to go into the belly of Tower Bridge, we could only do it every half hour, groups of 50 people that could go down to Spiral Case and come up. With Anne Hardy's installation, which was sound and sculpture, it's like field, it could only be 6 people at a given time to experience. So we actually inserted different temporalities to the nature of experience of those works, so that we could perhaps open up and close down. You know, you could spend hours dancing without knowing that you've spent 3 hours. Or you would be in a space that is for 5 minutes with 6 people that could feel longer. So I'm interested in exploring these different temporalities in art experience and in the encounter with the arts. Yeah.
Bueno, muchísimas. Yo solamente antes de terminar quiero hacer una breve. Primero quiero agradecer al público por haber venido. Al British Council, al MAC, a la Asociación de Curadores y sobre todo a Fatoş. Creo que hay muchas preguntas que quedan. A mí me da mucha curiosidad, por ejemplo, el reto que tiene como miembro del jurado del Turner Prize, tomando en cuenta que este año los miembros, los artistas seleccionados declinaron un solo premio y pidieron que el premio se comparta entre todos los finalistas, o el año anterior todos los trabajos fueron de video. Es decir, se vienen retos muy interesantes, pero me gustaría que para concluir nos hable de algo que quizás es interesante para el público acá, que no ha comentado, que es su participación y la relevancia de la fundación de la Asociación de Mujeres en las Artes, AWITA, AWITA. Si puede mencionar para cerrar algo en relación a esta asociación, me parece que podría ser interesante en un momento en donde en Perú se están creando grupos, uniones, asociaciones de profesionales digamos, vinculados a las prácticas culturales.
Thank you. So I'm not the jury of 25 this year, so I didn't choose it. It's next year. And we could definitely have a drink and a conversation about what happened this year at 25 and the reasons and the dynamics. And regarding AWITA, it is for me a very important association. I'm part of many different networks, curator networks or women networks. But with AWITA, one thing that kind of comes forward is mentoring and supporting each other. So we have these different kind of, let's say, gatherings that we go see exhibitions. And while walking from one exhibition to the other, you can have a project. Let's say I want to make a book, and then I want to talk to, let's say, Frances Morris about this book project, because I want to have her insights. Then I can ask, okay, can I be paired by Frances to talk about this book? So what happens is that you get paired, and while you're walking, you start talking about your projects, and then you have a kind of a on-the-go mentoring session. And I think that's very, very beautiful. The other thing that we do is, like, of course, go see exhibitions, but also panels. So one thing that will come back to your question about the times of fast is there's also this kind of now trend of slowing down, and slowing down is a political position. So we have a panel about also work-life balance, which doesn't exist. We all want to, but somehow doesn't. And we still want to, and doesn't. So with Avita, we discussed about that. How can you actually have a family, have kids, have a career that inspires you and that you feel inspired, and also a family and a weekend, and you know. So those are like very important things to feel that you're not on your own, thinking and struggling through, but actually it really does support you in having a conversation. And the other thing is with Avita, it's a professional network. So there are people who are working in galleries, in auction houses, in, you know, like curators that are independent or institutionalized, that can have a conversation. But it's not closed to men, you know, like we also go and see exhibitions, and if the curator is men and introduces us the exhibition, it's totally, absolutely fine, you know, but it's more about how can we be a supporting network for each other on a professional basis, alongside, you know, of course, our family and friends, our immediate support networks.
Bueno, creo que con eso concluimos. Hay un cóctel ahora posterior al fin de la presentación, de la estupenda presentación de Fatoş. Nuevamente le agradecemos mucho a Fatoş. Ella pasaba por Santiago de Chile y nos mandó un correo, dijo que estaba por acá porque no pasaba por Lima, y realmente es una persona muy generosa con su tiempo. El venir acá, el encallar en Lima, ahora va a Cusco, donde también se va a vincular con algunas personas en Cusco y con los organizadores de la Bienal de Cusco. Así que le agradecemos, creo, de parte de la comunidad cultural de Lima y del Perú por el tiempo y por la generosidad de transmitirnos estas experiencias que creo que van a ser muy enriquecedoras para los que estamos acá y los que van a ver o los que han visto online esta presentación. Muchísimas gracias, Fatoş.
Thank you, Rosa Carlos. Thank you, Sister Helman from British Council. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time in Peru, and I'm looking forward to engaging in conversations with artists, with curators. And thank you so much for staying this long and engaging with the lecture, and for your questions, and look forward to having Pisco together.